Welcome to the Old-Fashioned Masonic Podcast, where we talk all things Freemasons, while drinking an old-fashioned. If you're not already a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button now. Platforms other than YouTube tend to block some of our content. Subscribe now to get up-to-date videos and shorts as they release. Now, enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Old-Fashioned Masonic Podcast, where we talk all things Freemasons while drinking an old-fashioned. I'm Brian.
And I'm Russ.
I'm fidgeting with the remote, which is also our prompter. Today, we are going to talk about fast food.
All right.
And the fast food chain White Castle.
So why are we talking about White Castle?
White Castle and Freemasons, because we say Freemasons founded it. Definitely a Freemason, but then brought his buddy, and we're going to talk about it. So my question is, have you ever had a White Castle burger?
I have not.
Toward the end of this, we're going to try a White Castle burger as we send you over to our closing video for the White Castle. So let's
hurry up because they're getting cold.
Oh, shit. We're going to do it now.
Yeah, let's go. No, but they're getting cold, so we got to hurry up.
So, anybody that knows anything about a White Castle, there's like these little damn sliders. I'll take a bite while we'll try it.
You talk. I'm going to eat.
Okay. So, White Castle was founded in Wichita, Kansas. So, Walter Anderson and E.W. Billy Ingram, they were Masons in Wichita. Anderson was a master of Albert Pike Lodge, and Ingram was a master of BGB Lodge, number 433 in Wichita.
Okay.
So before we turn this story over to our friends at Weird History, we're going to talk a little bit about their bios. So I'm going to start with Walter Anderson. So Walter Anderson was born in November 26, 1880 in St. Mary, Kansas. In 1916, okay, so that he's 36 years old at the time, he started to sell hamburgers out of a streetcar body in a busy intersection in Wichita. The hamburgers were a hit. He just started doing so well. He added a couple of more stands until he had enough money that he could go from a stand to an actual shop or a store.
So 1916, so that World War I had started, but the United States, we weren't in it yet. But in previous podcasts, we've talked about Freemasons during this time.
During that time period.
They're all mixing in Wichita at this point
They are. There's a big what to do. So, and kind of fast forward, Anderson died December 13th, 1963. So Billy Ingram, he was born the same year, but just a month later from Anderson. He was December 27th, 1880. He was a real estate and insurance agent in Wichita. Pretty prominent guy, had some money, had some resources, mover, shaker. Fast forward, he died in 1966. So let's talk about the venture itself. So in 1921, so this is 5 years after, because he opened in 1916 on his little streetcars. Anderson met Ingram at Lodge. They were at a Lodge meeting, and together they began the chain of the White Castle. And in fact, Ingram didn't come in until the fourth location was moving, so that's when he came in. So, but Anderson, not only did he just come up with these little slider burgers, he developed an assembly line or a kitchen, and he was also known for his place being just unbelievably clean. And then the silly paper hats that the fry cooks used to wear, and napkins. I mean, just think about all the stuff that he pioneered. It wasn't just the slider. Okay. There was just a lot of stuff. And 1931, they had really blown up. So 10 years after him and Ingram met, they had just expanded to 116 locations in 11 states. Now that's some scale.
Impressive.
That's some scale back then, right? And to your point, through the wars and whatnot, that's some real scale. And the Depression.
Yes.
So there was a lot going on.
Smack in the middle of it.
So eventually, Walter Anderson, who founded it, he sold his shares of the business to Ingram in 1933. He continued to live in Kansas. He had several different companies he was involved with, including the Swift Airplane Factory, which actually he helped start in 1927, which was in the middle of this massive expansion.
Right.
Just think about what this dude was able to do.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to the website of White Castle, which we encourage you to do, there's no mention of Walter Anderson on the White Castle website. It's all E.W. Ingram. Because essentially E.W. just kept expanding this thing. Now, we're Wichitans, and we talk about this one because Anderson was a past master of our lodge, and it's founded in Wichita, but there hasn't been a White Castle in Wichita in 80 years. So for us to have never had a White Castle before, it shouldn't shock you because we're not being from Wichita just hasn't been here. So we're going to turn this over to our friends over at Weird History Facts for kind of a fun narrative.
But before we do have hamburgers here.
We do.
But talk to us about, so the only way you can get White Castle now is?
Thank you. Great point. So about 25% of their sales, or $20 million a year, is from their frozen White Castles. You get it in the freezer section. So full disclosure, it's my first time.
My first time.
And?
I said, how are you going to cook these? Throw them in the microwave.
Right.
And I thought to myself, I actually sort of like them.
So ours are plain. When you get it, it's got the onion, the burger, and whatnot. I could have probably put a pickle on it and liked it a little bit more, but it's good.
I like it.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's not half bad.
But very good. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay tuned. The next restaurateur we're going to talk about in a few episodes is Dave Thomas and his history of the founding of Wendy's. And you are going to be amazed who Dave Thomas worked for before he started Wendy's. So that's the tease. Go look it up for yourself. It's going to blow your mind.
I look forward.
In 1921, two men, Edgar Waldo Billy Ingram and Walter Anderson, opened a small burger shack in Wichita, Kansas. It was Ingram who came up with the name White Castle. He selected the word white because in the wake of the eye-opening expose made in Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, meat was having a bit of a PR problem, and Ingram felt white implied cleanliness. Castle was selected because it implied permanence and strength. And permanence and strength are what people really want out of a good burger. Ingram and Anderson decided to model the original building on one of the few structures that survived the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, the Chicago Water Tower. The result looked, conveniently enough, like a small white, castle. The whole place cost $700, which today would be equivalent to about $11,000. Now, Ingram had originally planned to go into the insurance business, but he changed his mind when Anderson convinced him that America was about to develop a lust for hamburgers. This might seem like a no-brainer today, but at the time, hamburgers weren't all that well known in the U.S. Those poor people, not even knowing what a hamburger was. White Castle can certainly claim to have sparked America's long-lasting love affair with a burger o' ham. The original White Castle sold 5-cent hamburgers, or sliders, by the sack. And for context, 5 cents in 1921 is equal to about 70 cents today. Every slider was made to exacting specifications and was served quickly, and that's how fast food was born. White Castle is definitely not in Kansas anymore. Sadly, despite being the place where White Castle was founded, Kansas hasn't had its own White Castle in 85 years. Early White Castle restaurants were pretty small, and that meant they couldn't accommodate much in the way of seating. To solve this problem, the company decided to encourage the idea of carryout. White Castle developed their now signature practice of selling sliders in sacks and packaging them in cardboard boxes to keep them warm. Starting sometime in the 1930s, White Castle started selling their burgers in branded boxes, which were sprayed with a special coating that prevented the grease from the sliders from soaking through the carton. The special carton was designed by a White Castle employee named Maurice Benny Benfer, who eventually worked his way up to Vice President of Public and Personnel Communications at White Castle. Given how long White Castle has stuck around, the uninitiated may be wondering what makes their sliders so special. Well, originally, White Castle sliders were made by grilling small balls of ground beef and then topping them with diced bits of fresh onions. The balls were then smashed flat. Please hold your ball smashing jokes until the end. And then they were flipped over. Finally, the finished slider was placed on a bun with a pickle. But that was then, and this is now. These days, the sliders are cooked by placing 3 dozen frozen beef patties on a griddle covered in water and a pile of rehydrated onions. This is because the sliders are now onion steamed rather than fried. Why? Mostly because the steaming process allows the patties to cook faster. These patties, incidentally, aren't your ordinary beef patties. They have small holes punched into them, which means they don't need to be flipped. No flipping, in turn, means the bun can be placed on the burger while it's still cooking, allowing the onion steam to flavor the bun as well as the meat. It was a little innovation suggested in 1954 by an employee named Earl Howell, and it's what gives White Castle sliders their totally unique taste. Nice work, Earl. Sliders are not just small hamburgers. Technically speaking, sliders have to be steamed while resting in a pile of onions. Finally, let's say you love White Castle, but you don't love going to White Castle. Well, no problem, because White Castle also makes frozen burgers that you can buy at most supermarkets. They're literally made at the exact same factory that makes the burgers they sell in their stores, and are identical in every way except they don't come with a pickle, because pickles don't microwave well. They actually spark and sometimes explode. Don't try it, just trust us on this one, kids. White Castle has actually been selling frozen versions of their famous slider since way back in 1950, and as of 2014, the product accounted for nearly 20% of the company's total revenue. That's a level of sales that makes them the #1 selling brand of frozen burgers in the world. Is anyone else feeling hungry all of a sudden?
What did you think of this episode? To continue to promote Freemasonry, hit that like button now. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button and give us a comment. The Old-Fashioned Masonic Podcast, where real Masons talk Freemasonry. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a comment.